I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just picked up my phone, opened my banking app, and canceled the e-transfer. All $89,000 of it. My half-sister's engagement party was still going on downstairs when I did it. I could hear the music through the floorboards of my parents' house. That ridiculous string quartet my stepmother had insisted on, the one I had already paid the deposit for. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the same bed I'd slept in every second weekend growing up, and I watched the little spinning circle on my screen until the transaction disappeared. Then I texted my daughter's babysitter, told her I'd be home by 9, and walked out the front door without saying goodbye to anyone. That was a Thursday in March. By Sunday, my phone had been blown up by 17 different people. By the following Friday, my stepsister Vanessa's dream wedding had been canceled entirely. Not by me, but by her fiancé's mother, a woman named Patricia Aldworth, who called me directly to apologize. I want to be clear about something before I tell you the rest of this. I am not a dramatic person. I'm 31 years old. I work in regulatory compliance for a mid-sized insurance firm in Mississauga. I own a semi-detached house that I share with my 7-year-old daughter, Maisie. I pack her lunches the night before. I have a Costco membership. I drive a 2019 Subaru Forester. I am genuinely one of the most boring people I know. The fact that any of this happened to me still feels slightly unreal. But it did happen, and I need to tell it from the beginning, because the end only makes sense if you understand how we got there. My father remarried when I was 9. My mother had passed away 2 years earlier, ovarian cancer, fast and devastating, and my dad met my stepmother Sandra at a grief support group, which I always thought was both very sad and a little ironic, given how much grief Sandra would eventually cause. She had a daughter from her first marriage, Vanessa, who was 7 at the time. We were supposed to become sisters. We became something more complicated than that. Vanessa was beautiful and charming and completely aware of both facts from a very young age. I was awkward and studious and had my mother's broad forehead and her tendency to go quiet when I was upset, which Vanessa always read as coldness. We were never close, but we were family, and in our family, that word carried weight. My dad is old school about it. You show up, you contribute, you don't keep score. I absorbed that ethic completely, maybe too completely. Because for most of my adult life, I spent a significant amount of emotional and financial energy keeping this blended family together through sheer force of will. When my dad had his bypass surgery 4 years ago, I was the one who coordinated the care schedule. When Sandra's mother needed a new wheelchair-accessible van, I helped research the options and contributed $4,000 toward it. When Vanessa's first relationship ended badly and she needed a place to stay, she lived in my spare room for 3 months. I made her coffee every morning. I helped her update her resume. I didn't ask for anything back. So when Vanessa got engaged to her boyfriend Trevor last fall, and my dad called me to discuss the wedding budget, I thought I understood what kind of conversation we were having. I didn't. She's always dreamed of something really special, my dad said. We were on the phone. He had that particular tone he gets when he's building toward something. Gentle, circling, like he's trying to land a plane without you noticing the runway. The venue she's got her eye on is the Millcroft Inn, down in Caledon. I knew the Millcroft. I'd been to a work function there once. Beautiful property, historic stone buildings, manicured grounds, that kind of place. That sounds lovely, I said carefully. It does. It really does. A pause. The package she's looking at, the full weekend, accommodations for the wedding party, catering, open bar, it comes out to around $89,000. I remember exactly where I was standing when he said that number. In my kitchen, next to the fridge. I had a dish towel over my shoulder. Maisie was doing homework at the table behind me. $89,000, I repeated. Trevor's parents have offered to contribute 20. Sandra and I can do 15, but that still leaves a gap. I did the math quickly. 20 plus 15 was 35. 89 minus 35 was $54,000. Dad, I said, are you asking me to cover $54,000 for Vanessa's wedding? We pay you back, sweetheart. Over time. You know we're good for it. I looked at Maisie. She was chewing the end of her pencil, frowning at a worksheet. She looked exactly like her grandmother, my mother, around the eyes. Maisie's father and I separated when she was 2. He's not a bad person, but he's not reliable. And when he moved to BC 3 years ago, the child support became inconsistent and then eventually stopped. I have a lawyer, and we're working on it, but the honest truth is that I have built my daughter's life largely on my own. The down payment on her house, her before and after school care, her swimming lessons and her hockey gear and her orthodontist, all of it on my salary, with some help from a small inheritance my mother's parents left me when they passed. That inheritance was sitting in a TFSA. It had grown. I had been protective of it in the way you're protective of something that represents more than money. It represented my mother and her parents, and the idea that I had a safety net for Maisie if something happened to me. And here was my father, circling it. I said I'd think about it. I spent 2 weeks thinking about it. I talked to my best friend about it, and she told me not to do it. I talked to my financial advisor about it, and he told me not to do it. I lay awake at night running numbers and scenarios and eventually arrived at a place where I convinced myself that family was family, that this was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, that I could rebuild the savings over time. I called my dad back and said yes, but I said it with conditions. I was very specific. I would contribute $54,000. I would do it through 2 separate transfers, half up front when the venue contract was signed, half 60 days before the wedding. In exchange, I wanted a written acknowledgement, not a legal document, just a family letter, that the money was a loan with a repayment plan. I also wanted, and this felt almost embarrassing to say out loud, to be included in the wedding. I didn't need to be in the wedding party. I just didn't want to be a guest who happened to also be the person who funded the whole thing. My dad said of course, absolutely. The letter never came. The first transfer went through and the venue was booked, and then somehow the conversation about putting things in writing just never happened. Every time I raised it, there was a reason to revisit it later. The wedding planning picked up momentum. Vanessa sent me photos of her dress. I was invited to the engagement party. I showed up. I brought wine. I smiled in the photos. I sent the second transfer in January. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in April. Maisie was not invited. I want you to understand what I mean when I say that. I had a conversation with Sandra in February, just confirming logistics. I asked whether there was a children's area, or whether I should arrange for a sitter, the way you do when you're trying to be considerate. Sandra said in a voice that was almost apologetic but not quite, that the wedding was adults only, that Vanessa and Trevor had made the decision together, that they wanted an elevated atmosphere. Maisie had not been invited to her aunt's wedding. I absorbed this. I said I understood. I arranged for a sitter. I did not say what I was thinking, which was that I had contributed $54,000 to this elevated atmosphere, and my daughter, who had called Vanessa Auntie V since she could talk, was not welcome to witness it. But I kept my mouth shut. I told myself it was Vanessa's day. I told myself I was being petty. I am very good at telling myself I am being petty when I am actually just being mistreated. The Saturday arrived. I drove out to Caledon alone. The Millcroft Inn spring is genuinely stunning. The Credit River running through the property, the stone mill building, everything just starting to green up after a long Ontario winter. I wore a navy dress I bought specifically for the occasion. I'd had my hair done the day before. I was trying. I was really genuinely trying. I arrived at the venue and gave my name at the entrance. The woman at the check-in table scrolled through her list, frowned slightly, scrolled again. "I have you here," she said, "but there's a note on your file. Can you just wait one moment?" I waited. A man in a venue blazer came over and asked if I would step to the side. I stepped to the side. He was polite, but not warm, the way people are when they have been told to handle something carefully. "The bride has requested," he said, "that you be escorted to a seat in the overflow area. It's a lovely space." "The overflow area," I said. "It's fully set up. You'd have full view of the ceremony on the screen." "I'm sorry, I'm the bride's sister. I've been to every planning meeting." I contributed. I stopped myself. I didn't want to say the number out loud to a stranger. I'm not a general guest. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. I understand, but I'm following the instructions we were given. If you'd like to wait here, I can try to reach the coordinator. Don't bother, I said. I'll reach her myself. I called Vanessa. It went to voicemail. I called my dad. He answered on the third ring, slightly breathless, the way people sound when they're in the middle of something festive. Sweetheart, hey, you're here? I'm standing outside the venue, Dad, in the overflow area. Can you tell me what's happening? There was a beat. Then, it's just for the ceremony. Just while the vows are, there wasn't enough room in the main. Dad, is this because of Maisie? Another beat, longer this time. Vanessa was worried, he said finally, that if Maisie came anyway, that you'd try to sneak her in. She just wanted to make sure. I stood there for a moment with my phone against my ear. The river was visible through the trees. A string quartet was playing something inside the building. The sun was doing exactly what it was supposed to do on a perfect April afternoon. She posted a note on my file, I said, like a flag, at the venue, because she thought I might try to sneak my 7-year-old into her wedding. It wasn't, she didn't want conflict. I would like you to put Sandra on the phone. Evie. Dad, Sandra, please. He put Sandra on. Sandra gave me the same performance she always gives. Soft voice, careful words, lots of, I understand why you're feeling this way, and very little actual accountability. She said Vanessa had been anxious. She said it was a high-stress day. She said that maybe after the reception we could all sit down and… Sandra, I said, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm going to get in my car. I am going to drive home and pick up my daughter. And when I get there, I'm going to open my banking app. There was a pause. What does that mean? She said. It means I paid a deposit. And I paid a second transfer. And I paid it as a loan. And I never received the letter we agreed on. So right now, what I have is a large amount of money that I sent to a venue on behalf of a family member with no written agreement, and I have a very good memory for what we discussed. You can't. The wedding is today. I know when the wedding is, I said. I'm standing outside it. I hung up. I sat in my car for about 4 minutes. Then I opened my banking app, and I canceled the second e-transfer, the $44,500 that had been sitting in the venue's account as the final payment, which I had been told was processing, but which my banking app confirmed had not yet fully cleared due to a hold on large transfers. The refund would take 3 to 5 business days, but the transfer itself was flagged immediately. Then I called the venue's main line directly. I explained the situation calmly. I told them that I was the primary contributor on the account, that there was a dispute about the financial arrangements, and that I was formally requesting a hold on any services pending resolution. I gave them my name and my email. I told them I had documentation of the original payment discussions. The woman I spoke to was very professional. She put me on hold. She came back 5 minutes later and said that she would need to consult with her manager and the coordinator, and that she was very sorry for the situation. I thanked her and hung up. The next call I received was not from my father or Sandra or Vanessa. It was from a number I didn't recognize, a 905 area code. I answered it. Is this Evelyn? The voice was a woman's. Older. Measured in the way that people are measured when they have been running things for a long time and have learned not to waste words. Yes, I said. This is Patricia Aldworth, Trevor's mother. I am so sorry to call you like this. I got your number from the coordinator. I want you to know that I have been made aware of what happened at the entrance, and I want to tell you directly that it is absolutely unacceptable. I didn't say anything. I also need to tell you, she continued, that my son became aware of it approximately 20 minutes ago. He confronted Vanessa about it during what I understand was a significant argument, and the ceremony has been postponed until they can resolve it. The ceremony has been postponed, I repeated. Yes, Trevor is. He's a good boy. He doesn't have a lot of patience for cruelty, and what was done to you was cruel. She paused. I don't know what the next hour looks like for the two of them, but I wanted you to know that you are not invisible in this situation. someone sees what happened. We spoke for a few more minutes. Patricia was matter-of-fact and kind in equal measure. She told me that her family had always had reservations about the financial arrangement, that she had encouraged Trevor to insist on a proper contract, and that he had deferred to Vanessa, which she regretted. She told me that, whatever happened with the wedding, she would personally make sure that any funds I'd contributed were tracked and returned. We hung up. I sat in my car. The string quartet had stopped playing. My phone started ringing in earnest then. My dad, Sandra, a number that turned out to be Vanessa calling from someone else's phone. I didn't answer any of them. I texted my sitter, running a bit later than planned. All good. She sent back a thumbs up and a photo of Maisie building something with her Lego on the living room floor. I looked at that photo for a long time. I drove home. I stopped at Tim Hortons and got Maisie a hot chocolate and myself a large coffee. When I walked in the door, she ran at me like she always does, arms out, completely unself-conscious the way 7-year-olds still are. I held on to her for longer than I usually do, and she let me, and then she wriggled away and wanted to show me her Lego creation, which was a horse stable with a functioning gate. I made it for Aunt Nessa's farm, she said. She had this idea that Vanessa lived on a farm because we'd been to an event at the family's cottage once, when Maisie was 4. For a wedding present. I looked at the stable. It had taken her hours. You could tell. She's going to love it, I said. I don't know why I said that. I think I just wasn't ready to explain anything yet. That evening, after Maisie was in bed, I sat down with my laptop and I drafted an email. I addressed it to my father, Sandra, and Vanessa. I kept it short. I said that I had canceled the second transfer and was requesting documentation of all funds received by the venue in my name, as I would be pursuing repayment through whatever avenue was available to me. I said that going forward, all communication about financial matters should be in writing. I said that I wished Vanessa well, genuinely, and that I hoped she and Trevor were able to find their way through whatever was happening between them, but that I was no longer in a position to be involved in the planning or funding of the event. I CC'd a lawyer friend who had offered to look at things if they escalated. I didn't ask her permission. I just put her address in the CC line, which I knew would be noticed. I hit send. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed. The wedding did not happen that day. It didn't happen the following weekend either. I learned through Patricia, who became an unexpected and genuine presence in my life over the following weeks, that Trevor and Vanessa had a series of significant conversations in the days after, and that Trevor ultimately called off the engagement, not because of the money, because of what the money revealed. He said it showed him something he couldn't unsee, Patricia told me when she called to let me know. The way she handled it, the planning, all of it. The venue, to their credit, worked with us. Because I had acted within the window of the hold, a significant portion of the second transfer was recoverable. Patricia personally ensured the first deposit was tracked and repaid through Trevor's family, which, I want to be honest, I was not expecting and did not ask for. It took several months, but it was done. My father and I have had 2 very long conversations since then. The first one was hard. He cried. He apologized. He said that he had known about the entrance situation before I called him and had hoped it would resolve itself without conflict, which I told him, as calmly as I could, was a form of choosing Vanessa over me. He didn't argue with that. He said he was sorry. The second conversation was better. We talked about my mother, which we almost never do. He said he thought he'd been trying so hard to make the blended family work that he'd lost track of what I'd been carrying. I told him about Maisie's Lego stable, still sitting on the craft table in the spare room. He asked if he could come see it. I said yes. Sandra and I don't really talk. That might change or it might not. Vanessa called me once, about 6 weeks later. I answered, because I thought I should. She didn't apologize, exactly, but she said she'd been in therapy and was starting to understand some things about how she treated people. I told her I was glad to hear it. We didn't make plans. We didn't promise anything. It was a civil 6 minutes, which felt like progress. Maisie still has the Lego stable. She moved it to her bedroom shelf at some point and added a few horses she found at a garage sale. She's repurposed it. It's hers now. I kept the $44,500. I kept the repaid deposit. I put it back in my TFSA, In the account that came from my grandparents, that came from my mother. It's there for Maisie. I didn't fight anyone. I didn't make a scene. I didn't threaten or demand or perform for anyone's benefit. I sat in a parking lot in Caledon on a beautiful April afternoon, looked at a photo of my daughter building something careful and small and entirely her own, and I made a decision about whose side I was on. I should have made it sooner, but I made it when it mattered, and that's the part I'm holding on to. I keep thinking about Maisie's Lego staple, the little gate that actually opens. The horses she found at a garage sale and repurposed to make it hers. She built that thing over an entire afternoon because she loved her Auntie V, and she never once asked whether Auntie V deserved it. That's the part that stays with me, not the money, not the flagged file at the front desk, not even the look on that venue manager's face when he told me politely that I had been assigned to overflow seating at the wedding I had funded. What stays with me is that my daughter, who knew nothing of any of it, just kept building. There's something in that I'm still learning from. I was raised to believe that being good meant being useful, that love was something you demonstrated through showing up, contributing, not keeping score. And I do believe that I still believe it. But I think I confused being good with being available for mistreatment, and those are not the same thing at all. Goodness without discernment isn't virtue. It's just a door left open that eventually someone will walk through without wiping their feet. The thing about what happened in Caledon is that nobody did anything illegal. Nobody broke a law. Vanessa didn't forge a document or steal anything. She just made a series of choices, small ones, over a long period of time, that revealed exactly what she thought of me. And I had been watching those choices for years and deciding, each time, that the charitable interpretation was the correct one. That she was stressed or thoughtless or going through something. That I was being too sensitive. What I know now is that the pattern was always there. I just wasn't willing to read it clearly, because reading it clearly meant accepting something I didn't want to accept. That the relationship I had been investing in wasn't the relationship that actually existed. That took a certain kind of honesty I had been avoiding. Not honesty with Vanessa or my dad or Sandra. Honesty with myself. About what I was getting back. About what I was modeling for Maisie by staying quiet and absorbing and rationalizing. When I finally moved, when I sat in that parking lot and opened my banking app, it wasn't anger that drove me. It was something quieter. Something closer to clarity. I had been waiting for the situation to become undeniable. And it finally was, and once it was, I knew exactly what to do. I had the documentation. I knew the account. I had kept every email, because some part of me had always known this day might come and had been preparing for it without fully admitting it. That preparation wasn't cynicism, it was just paying attention, using the part of my brain that I had spent years overriding in the name of keeping the peace. Patricia Aldworth, a woman I had never spoken to before that afternoon, saw what happened and called me. She didn't have to. She did it because she thought it was right. I want to be that kind of person. I want Maisie to grow up watching me be that kind of person. Not someone who never gets hurt, but someone who, when the moment comes, knows which way to stand. The money came back. The relationship didn't, not fully, and I've made a kind of peace with that. Some things, once you see them clearly, can't be unseen. That's not a tragedy. That's just honesty finally catching up to reality. Maisie still has the stable on her shelf. She added a little fence around it last week, made from popsicle sticks. She's still building. So am I.